All right, this past Friday was Good Friday on so many different ways. But one way, there was a federal district court in Texas that ruled to protect the health and safety of women and girls by halting an FDA approval of chemical abortion drugs. And almost immediately following that court's decision, Democrat attorney in the state of Washington sued the federal government for increased access to abortion drugs. Well, these maneuvers set forth a stage for what unquestionably is going to be a continued fight to protect the unborn. And most legal experts anticipate that eventually this is going to go to the U.S. Supreme Court. Well, joining me now to discuss this is Lathan Watts. He's the Vice President of Public Affairs at the Alliance Defending Freedom, who represents the 4 medical groups and the 4 doctors who sued the FDA. And so, Lathan, thank you so much for joining us on Washington Watch. It's an honor to have you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
All right, well, let's discuss the specific court case that ADF was involved in. That's just one. Your team argued that the FDA literally chose politics over science when it tried to push through the legalization of these chemical abortion drugs back in, I believe it's the year 2000. But HHS Secretary Xavier Becerra said it's just the other way around. In fact, let me play this clip and get your reaction to it. This is what he said yesterday on CNN's State of the Union.
If a judge decides to substitute his preference, his personal opinion, for that of scientists and medical professionals, what drug isn't subject to some kind of legal challenge? So we have to go to court.
All right, we have to go to court. All right, let's set the record straight on what is opinion versus what is science.
Certainly. Well, our clients, the doctors and the medical associations that they represent, they presented the science to the FDA all the way back in the year 2000 when the FDA first started the approval for these chemical abortion drugs, and by filing a petition challenging the approval of it. And the FDA, by its own rules, was supposed to respond to that petition within 180 days, and they stonewalled our clients for over 14 years. The FDA has abandoned, in this case, its responsibility to protect the health and safety of consumers in order to promote basically a political agenda of creating a nationwide mail order abortion drug market. So they illegally approved this drug, and then some 14 years after stonewalling our clients, then removed all the safety protocols that had been put in place with the approval. So we were now finally able to go to court to challenge the approval, and that's what we did. Thankfully, Judge Kazmarek in the Northern District of Texas granted our motion for a preliminary injunction. He did voluntarily stay his order for a week to give them opportunity to file an emergency appeal, which they have. So now that will go to the Fifth Circuit. And once they have made a decision, then we'll know if the nationwide injunction will go into place while the litigation proceeds.
Well, you know, all of this really puts into question the credibility of the FDA. It's unbelievable. This has been going on for 20-something years, as you mentioned. And as I understand it, they literally, in order to push their argument, had to declare that a pregnant woman has an illness to push this whole thing through. That in itself is bizarre and has to make people scratch their heads as the credibility of their entire argument. And somehow from that, they come to the conclusion that these abortion drugs have some sort of meaningful therapeutic benefit. But the truth of the matter is, and I want to make sure I'm correct on this, the FDA really never even did studies as to the safety of these drugs. Is that correct?
They certainly didn't study its impacts on adolescent populations, which they should for any drug. They relied on some very unreliable studies. And again, as I said, stonewalled our clients for a decade and a half. And then when they finally got around to replying to our clients on the same day, they removed the in-person doctor requirement visit, reduced the number of visits from 3 to 1, lifted the requirement that only a doctor can prescribe it, authorized it to be sent through the mail, which violates the Comstock Act. and lifted the requirement that doctors report any sort of adverse impacts of the drug unless it actually resulted in death. So at every step along the way, they have violated really their own rules. And this litigation is the only way to bring some sort of accountability to an executive branch agency. No one gets to vote on these bureaucrats. So when they violate their own rules, this is what has to happen in order to get the FDA to actually fulfill its mission and protect the health and safety of women in this country.
So yet again, they are pushing. I mean, the left seems so much to push follow the science, but they themselves are the ones who never follow the science. And this is fair to say this is yet another example of that, correct?
Sadly, yes. 1 in 5 women who undergo a chemical abortion have some sort of serious complication to it. And our doctors are people working on the front lines who end up having to see these women sometimes in emergency rooms when something has gone wrong. Again, it is the mission of the FDA to protect the health and safety of consumers, and they have abandoned that in the case of mifepristone.
Wow. Well, I'll be speaking with our next guest about that very issue. The Washington State Attorney General's reaction, as well as calls from the left for the Biden administration to simply disregard this whole court ruling. That in itself is yet again a stunning development with all of this. But after you've got this great legal win from ADF, what are your thoughts? I mean, this has to be a great day. Of course, ADF has a host of victories over the years, but this is yet another one that's a big deal.
It really is, because at the end of the day, when this litigation is successful, women and girls in this country are going to be safer. I mean, that's really what it's all about. These drugs are dangerous. They create all sorts of complications for women when they take them, and they should never have been put on the market in the first place. And so to be able to finally hold the FDA accountable, it was a great day on Good Friday, as you mentioned, to get that decision. And now we'll wait as things proceed. But we are confident that when it's all said and done, that a dangerous drug will be off the market.
Well, Lathan Watts, you and all of your colleagues there at Alliance Defending Freedom, thank you for the incredible work that all of you have done, and thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join us this evening on Washington Watch. Job well done. Thank you.